Have you ever asked yourself why someone you care about treats you like an option instead of a priority? That question alone cuts deep, because when you give your time, your heart, your energy, and it feels like it's not valued, something inside you begins to question your own worth. You wonder if maybe you're asking for too much or maybe you're not enough, but here's the truth. You are not asking for too much. You are asking the wrong person to rise to the level you deserve. And that is not your failure. That is their blind spot. When you love someone who doesn't fully value you, the pain is heavy, but that pain carries a hidden power. It's your inner compass trying to remind you of who you are and what you're worth. You see, when you tolerate being undervalued, you teach the other person how to treat you. Without realizing it, you send the message that your boundaries can be ignored, that your needs don't matter. But the moment you decide to change how you respond, the entire dynamic begins to shift. Here's what you must understand. People do not change because you beg them to. They change because they are forced to face the reality of what they stand to lose. And the only way to create that wake-up call is by stepping fully into your power, by refusing to accept crumbs when you deserve the whole feast. It starts the second you decide that your self-respect is more important than someone else's comfort. I know how hard this feels. I know the fear that whispers, what if I walk away and they never change? What if I end up alone? But let me ask you this, isn't being alone better than being with someone who makes you feel unseen, unheard, and unworthy? Being alone is an emptiness. It's space. Space to rebuild, to breathe, to attract the kind of love that doesn't make you question your value, but confirms it every single day. Stay with me, because this isn't about revenge, and it's not about forcing someone to love you the way you need. It's about sending a powerful, silent message. I will not settle for less than I deserve. That energy alone creates a shift. Psychology proves that when people feel scarcity, when they realize what they could lose, their brain reacts with urgency. Suddenly, the effort they once withheld starts to surface. Suddenly, the comfort of your presence isn't so guaranteed, and they begin to reflect on what they've taken for granted. But the true reward is not whether they change or not. The true reward is what happens inside you. You stop begging for scraps. You stop shrinking yourself just to be tolerated. You rise, and in rising, you teach others how to treat you, not through words, but through the unwavering strength of your actions. So stay here, because as we go deeper, you'll discover exactly how to shift this dynamic, how to reclaim your self-worth, and how to create change without losing yourself in the process. What you'll gain is more than just a change in them. You'll gain a transformation in you, the kind that commands respect, attracts love, and builds a life where you are no longer undervalued, but deeply cherished. When someone does not value you, the first instinct is often to try harder, to give more, to prove that you are worthy of their love and attention. But that path always leads to exhaustion and disappointment, because love cannot be earned through self-sacrifice. Real love, real respect is not something you beg for. It is something you naturally receive when you stand in your truth. The more you chase, the more they retreat. The more you bend, the more they break you. The shift happens when you decide to stop proving and start embodying. Think about this. When you lower your standards to keep someone, you are not keeping them. You are losing yourself. And the more you lose yourself, the less they value you. Human psychology responds to what is scarce and respects what has boundaries. If everything about you is available without limit, it feels ordinary. But when you reclaim your self-respect, when you create space, when you show that your presence is a privilege, that's when the value rises. It's not manipulation, it's alignment. It's recognizing that your time, energy, and love are treasures, not handouts. Every person has an inner voice that whispers when they are being undervalued. It shows up as knots in your stomach, as the heaviness in your chest, as sleepless nights where your mind replays conversations, wondering why you don't feel enough. That voice is not there to torment you. It is there to guide you. It is saying, this is not love, this is compromise of your soul. Listen to it, trust it, because the longer you ignore it, the louder it becomes, until you no longer recognize yourself in the mirror. The most powerful decision you can make is to step back, to pause, to choose silence over chasing. Silence is not weakness, silence is strength. Silence forces reflection. When you stop trying to convince someone to see your value, they are left to face the truth of who you are and what they stand to lose. And here is the paradox. When you no longer need their validation, when you detach from the outcome, you gain the very power that shifts the dynamic. Imagine for a moment what it feels like to fully embrace that power, to walk into a room with quiet confidence, not seeking approval, but radiating worth. To know that whether they change or not, you are whole, complete, and enough. That energy cannot be ignored. People sense it. They respond to it. It awakens respect. It awakens desire. And most importantly, it awakens your own sense of freedom. You do not have to scream to be heard. You do not have to beg to be seen. You simply have to decide that you are no longer available for anything less than real respect and genuine love. That decision alone begins to change everything because it removes desperation from your energy and replaces it with dignity. Dignity is magnetic. Dignity attracts what desperation repels. Stay committed to this truth. If someone cannot rise to value you, that is not your burden to carry. That is their limitation to face. You are not here to shrink yourself into someone else's comfort zone. You are here to expand into your highest worth, to show up in your power, and to claim the love and respect that already belongs to you. And the moment you begin living from that place, everything around you starts to transform. There comes a moment when you realize that waiting for someone else to change is the very thing keeping you trapped. The longer you wait, the more your life is put on hold and the more power you give away. Change does not begin with them. It begins with you. The shift happens the instant you decide to take back control of your energy and direct it inward instead of outward. Because the truth is, the person who must change first is not him, it is you. Not changing who you are, but changing what you allow, what you accept, and what you believe about yourself. When you build your self-worth from the inside, you no longer depend on someone else to recognize it. And that is where your strength lies. Psychology shows that self-validation is the foundation of emotional resilience. When you anchor your value in your own heart, no one can take it away. No matter how they treat you, you become unshakable. Their neglect no longer defines you. Their silence no longer controls you, and their absence no longer breaks you. Ask yourself this: if you stop trying to earn their love today, what could you do with all the energy you've been pouring into them? That energy could fuel your growth, your passions, your dreams. It could build a life so fulfilling that their recognition becomes irrelevant. And when you begin living that way, something powerful happens. They notice. Because nothing commands respect more than a person who respects themselves so deeply that they thrive regardless of who stands beside them. The irony of love is that people often only realize your value when they feel the weight of your absence. But you don't create that realization by begging, pleading, or arguing. You create it by living fully, by embodying the truth that you will not wait in the shadows of someone else's indecision. That doesn't mean you turn cold or bitter. It means you rise into your strength, into your joy, into the radiant version of yourself that refuses to be dimmed. And here's what makes this transformation unstoppable. Once you taste the freedom of owning your worth, you cannot go back to who you were. You cannot go back to shrinking. You cannot go back to begging. That old version of you begins to fade, and in its place emerges someone unbreakable, someone who knows that being undervalued is no longer an option. Someone who doesn't just inspire change in others, but demands it through their very presence. This is not just about getting him to change. This is about you becoming so powerful within yourself that whether he changes or not, you are free. And freedom is the most magnetic energy on earth. Freedom draws love, respect, and loyalty. Freedom creates space for relationships that lift you higher instead of pulling you down. So the choice before you is clear. Stay waiting for someone else to see your worth. Or decide today that your worth has never depended on anyone's vision but your own. The moment you choose the second path, your life begins to shift. Not slowly, not someday, but immediately. Because everything changes the instant you finally remember who you are. Strength is not built in the moments when everything feels easy. Strength is born in the silence after you've been ignored, in the ache after you've been dismissed, in the loneliness that follows when you finally choose yourself over being undervalued. That is where resilience takes root. That is where the unshakable version of you begins to rise. Because what breaks you is not rejection itself. It is forgetting your power in the face of rejection. And the moment you choose to remember it, everything begins to change. Human beings are wired to mirror what they experience. If you consistently show that you will tolerate neglect, it reinforces neglect. But when you radiate self-respect, When your actions declare that you are not available for anything less than love, you invite others to rise to meet you. Psychology calls this modeling. What you model, others reflect. If you model strength, they must decide to either step into it or step aside. And that decision is theirs, not yours to control. What you can control is the standard you set. Standards are not demands. Standards are truths you live by. They are silent rules that guide your life and relationships. If your standard is respect, you will not stay where it's absent. If your standard is honesty, you will not remain where there are lies. If your standard is love, you will not settle for indifference. The clearer your standards, the stronger your boundaries, and the more magnetic your energy becomes. And here lies the paradox. People are most drawn to those who don't need them to survive. The more you anchor your happiness in your own growth, the more attractive you become. Not because you are trying to win someone over, but because independence signals strength. In psychology, this is called the principle of scarcity. What is rare is valued. When your time, your energy, and your presence are treated as precious, they gain weight. They are no longer taken for granted because you no longer allow them to be. Think of how powerful it feels to walk in that energy, to know that love is not about begging for crumbs, but about sharing abundance. To recognize that the person who cannot value you today may wake up tomorrow and see you differently. But by then, you will not be waiting for their recognition. You will already be walking in your light. And that light will attract people, opportunities, and experiences that affirm your worth without question. When you begin to embody this truth, you stop asking, will he change? And you start asking, will I keep rising? Because the more you rise, the less it matters whether he does or not. His growth becomes his responsibility, and your growth becomes your priority. That separation is where freedom begins. That separation is where love transforms from desperation into choice. Never forget, the love you seek outside can only be as strong as the love you cultivate inside. Build that love first. Nourish it, protect it. And then, whether he changes or not, you will never again question your value. Because it will no longer rest in his hands. It will live in yours, unshakable, undeniable, and everlasting. Deepest shift happens when you no longer measure your value by how much someone chooses you, but by how firmly you choose yourself. That choice becomes the foundation of every action, every decision, every boundary you set. It sends a clear message to the world. I am no longer available for half love, for broken promises, for attention that comes and goes like the wind. I'm available only for what aligns with my worth. That declaration is not spoken, it is lived. And when you live it, the people around you have no choice but to respond. Respect is not something you demand with words. Respect is something you create with your energy. When you carry yourself with dignity, when you stop apologizing for existing, when you no longer bend yourself into shapes to fit into someone else's small box, respect follows. Because people can feel it. They can sense it in the way you walk, in the way you say no without guilt, in the way you say yes without fear. That inner strength shifts the atmosphere. It changes not just how others treat you, but how you see yourself. And here is where transformation becomes permanent. When you stop seeking proof of your worth in someone else's actions, you break the cycle of dependency. Dependency keeps you waiting, hoping, and tolerating. Independence liberates you. It allows you to love without clinging, to give without losing yourself, to walk away without crumbling. That is the kind of strength that does not just change relationships, it changes your life. There is a reason why people often chase what they cannot easily have. The human brain craves challenge. It values what feels rare. When you give everything too quickly, when you tolerate too much for too long, you strip away the challenge and diminish the value of your presence. When you step back, when you hold your ground, when you show that your love is deep but not desperate, you reawaken the natural balance that creates respect and desire. This is not about playing games. This is about alignment with truth. Your truth is that you are worthy of love that is consistent, respect that is steady, and commitment that does not waver. Picture what happens when you begin to live this way. Suddenly, the fear of losing him shrinks because you realize that the real loss will be losing yourself. Suddenly, his approval feels less important because your own approval carries more weight. Suddenly, whether he chooses to rise or not, you feel free. That freedom is what transforms silence into power, distance into clarity, and boundaries into a magnet for genuine love. The journey is not about fixing him. It is about rising so high within yourself that he either elevates to meet you or fades into the background of your growth. Both outcomes serve you. Both outcomes protect your soul. Both outcomes remind you that your worth has never been negotiable. So do not ask for change. Do not plead for recognition. Embody the standard. Live the standard. And watch how everything around you begins to align with the power of who you truly are. That is how you stop being undervalued. That is how you reclaim your life. That is how you finally step into the love and respect that have always been yours to claim. The moment you fully recognize your own worth, something extraordinary happens. You stop negotiating with people who cannot see it. You stop explaining why you deserve better. You stop justifying your needs as if they are unreasonable. Needs are not weaknesses. They are the foundation of a healthy connection. To want respect is not asking too much. To want consistency is not demanding. To want love that does not make you question yourself every night is not a burden. It is the bare minimum, and you are worthy of far more than the minimum. When you carry yourself as someone who knows this truth, the energy around you shifts. You no longer speak from desperation. You speak from certainty. You no longer act from fear. You act from clarity. And this shift does not go unnoticed. Human beings are wired to respond to confidence. Psychology shows that confidence is magnetic because it signals security, strength, and leadership. When you embody it, people naturally adjust how they treat you because the energy you project commands a higher level of interaction. This is where transformation becomes undeniable. The person who once dismissed your needs may suddenly lean in. The one who once overlooked you may begin to notice. But here's the most important part. By the time this happens, you will no longer be dependent on their recognition. You will see it as confirmation of what you already knew, not validation of what you once doubted. And that difference changes everything because it means you hold the power now. It takes courage to step into this space, courage to risk losing someone rather than lose yourself, courage to walk away from comfort that feels familiar but suffocates your soul. But courage is like a muscle. It grows stronger the more you use it. Every time you say no to being undervalued, you strengthen it. Every time you choose self-respect over approval, you strengthen it. Every time you remind yourself that love should never require you to shrink, you strengthen it. That is how courage becomes your default. And once courage becomes your default, your entire reality changes. You stop attracting relationships built on imbalance because imbalance cannot exist in the presence of unwavering self-worth. You stop being drawn to people who only give half of themselves because half love is no longer acceptable to your soul. You stop tolerating neglect disguised as normal because you have elevated your standard beyond it. This is not arrogance. This is alignment. It is living from the truth that the love you deserve is abundant, expansive, and certain. Every time you rise in this way, you set a new standard not just for yourself, but for everyone who enters your life. You teach them through your actions how to treat you. You show them that your presence is a privilege, not a guarantee. You remind them that your love is deep, but it is not desperate. That lesson is powerful. That lesson is unforgettable. That lesson forces change. So never fear the loss of someone who refuses to value you. Fear instead the loss of your own light while waiting for them to see it. Because the truth is your light does not need their recognition to shine. It was always bright. It was always enough. And the moment you embrace it fully, you will never again question whether you are valued. You will know it in your soul, unshakable and eternal. There is a powerful shift that takes place when you stop trying to control someone else's behavior and start directing all of your energy into your own growth. The moment you stop asking, why won't he change? And instead ask, how can I rise higher? You step into freedom. You stop being chained to someone else's choices and start building a life that reflects your own standards. This is where true transformation begins inside, where no one else has the power to interfere. Growth is magnetic. When you dedicate yourself to becoming stronger, healthier, and more fulfilled, the people around you feel it. Some will be inspired to rise with you, while others will fall away because they can no longer match your energy. Both outcomes serve you. Both outcomes protect your soul. Because the people who stay will align with the love and respect you now demand, and the ones who leave will make space for something greater. The human mind is wired to respect what is in motion. When you are stagnant, waiting for change outside of yourself, people assume they can treat you the same way forever. But when you move, when you grow, when you evolve, You send a silent message: I am not the same person you took for granted. I am leveling up with or without you. That message is powerful. It commands either adaptation or exit, and either way, you win. Ask yourself, who do you become when you stop pouring your strength into convincing someone to value you, and instead pour it into creating the life you dream of? You become radiant. You become untouchable. You become the version of yourself that no longer needs validation because your very existence is validation enough. And that kind of energy cannot be ignored. Psychology tells us that people are naturally drawn to what feels scarce and valuable. When you treat yourself as valuable, when you stop overgiving, when you set limits that protect your peace, you activate this principle. Suddenly your presence feels different. It feels like a gift, not an entitlement. It feels like something to be cherished, not something to be consumed without thought. And this is how respect begins to form, not because you demanded it, but because you embodied it. The greatest irony is that the moment you no longer need someone to value you is often the moment they finally do. They notice the glow in your eyes. They feel the shift in your energy. They realize that the old version of you who tolerated neglect is gone, replaced by someone unshakable. Whether they rise to meet this version or not is their choice, but your growth is guaranteed. And that guarantee is what sets you free. Remember this: love that requires you to beg is not love. Respect that requires you to shrink is not respect. Attention that only comes when you chase is not attention worth keeping. You are not here to be tolerated. You are here to be celebrated. And when you choose yourself first, everything else in your life begins to align with that truth. That is when love transforms. That is when your worth becomes undeniable. That is when you step fully into the life and love you were always meant to have. Every time you decide to honor your worth, you send a powerful signal not just to others, but to yourself. You are teaching your own mind that you are no longer willing to live small, no longer willing to accept love that comes with conditions, no longer willing to carry relationships on your shoulders while someone else drags their feet. That act of honoring yourself reshapes your identity. It rewires how you see yourself. And that inner shift is the most important change of all. Because once you see yourself as worthy, no one can convince you otherwise. The reason so many people remain stuck in relationships where they are undervalued is not because they are weak, but because they forget their power. They forget that love is supposed to add to your life, not drain it. They forget that boundaries are not walls to keep people out, but doors that show who belongs inside. They forget that self-respect is not selfishness. It is survival. When you reclaim these truths, you stop living in the shadow of someone else's inability to love you properly. You step into the light of your own self-awareness, and from that place, you can never go back. When you choose self-respect over desperation, your energy changes. You carry yourself differently. You speak with more certainty. You walk with more confidence. That confidence is not arrogance, it is clarity. And clarity is attractive because it creates certainty for others. People respect what feels certain, they admire it, they follow it, and they are compelled to rise to meet it because anything less becomes too small in comparison. There is immense strength in no longer being controlled by fear. Fear of losing him, fear of being alone, fear of starting over. Fear is the chain that keeps you bound to mediocrity. But the moment you realize that being alone with your dignity intact is far better than being together, while your spirit is broken, the chain shatters. You see that solitude is not emptiness, it is empowerment. It is space to heal, to rebuild, to attract something greater. And once you know this, you are no longer afraid of letting go. That freedom transforms how you love. You no longer love out of need, you love out of choice. You no longer cling, you connect. You no longer settle, you soar. And when you love from that place, the love you give is more powerful, more radiant, and more magnetic than anything you gave while trapped in fear. This is the love that inspires change, not because you demanded it, but because you embodied it. The truth is, the most powerful way to change how someone treats you is not through words, but through transformation. When you rise, they must decide, rise with you or lose you. And whichever path they choose, you win, because you are no longer tied to their growth. You are tied only to your own. And that is where your freedom, your power, and your unshakable worth truly live. The most powerful love you will ever experience is the love you give yourself, because it sets the standard for everything else. When you deeply respect yourself, you naturally filter out people who cannot meet that level. You no longer chase, you no longer beg, you no longer compromise your soul just to hold on to someone who does not recognize your value. Instead, you walk with the quiet confidence of knowing that you are enough and that enoughness will never depend on someone else's approval. This is where true transformation unfolds. Self-respect is not a single decision. It is a daily practice. Every time you say no to something that dishonors you, you are building it. Every time you refuse to shrink, you are strengthening it. Every time you choose peace over chaos, clarity over confusion, and self-love over self-betrayal, you are reinforcing it. Over time, this practice becomes unshakable. It becomes who you are. And when that happens, you will no longer tolerate even the smallest signs of being undervalued because your soul will instantly reject anything that does not align with your worth. Psychology shows that people treat you according to the boundaries you set and maintain. Boundaries are not about pushing people away. They are about teaching them how to treat you. Without boundaries, love becomes blurred, respect fades, and resentment grows. But with boundaries, relationships flourish or fall away, and either outcome is a victory. Flourishing means the connection aligns with your truth. Falling away means space has opened for something better. Both outcomes serve you. Both outcomes keep you aligned with your worth. The beauty of this shift is that it removes the weight of control from your shoulders. You are no longer responsible for forcing someone to change. You are only responsible for living your truth with unwavering strength. And when you do, the other person has only two choices: rise to meet you or fall away. If they rise, the relationship transforms into something stronger, built on mutual respect. If they fall away, you are spared from carrying dead weight that was never meant to walk with you into your future. There is nothing more magnetic than a person who knows they are whole. When you stop waiting to be chosen and start choosing yourself, the energy you radiate changes everything. You no longer carry the heaviness of desperation. You carry the lightness of certainty. And that certainty pulls people in, not because you are chasing, but because you are centered, not because you are demanding, but because you are grounded. That kind of energy is rare, and what is rare is always valued. So let your actions declare the truth. You will no longer stay where you are treated as an option. You will no longer silence your needs to keep the peace. You will no longer settle for attention that costs you your dignity. You are here to be loved fully, respected deeply, and valued endlessly. And whether he rises to meet you or not, you have already won because you finally see yourself as the treasure you have always been. There is a freedom that comes when you finally understand that you are not here to convince anyone of your value. You are not here to beg for attention, to fight for scraps of affection, or to prove your worth to someone who is blind to it. Your value is not up for debate. It is not dependent on recognition, and it is not diminished because someone fails to see it. It is constant, it is unshakable, and it belongs to you regardless of who chooses to honor it. This realization shifts the balance of power. The moment you stop asking, why doesn't he value me? And instead affirm, I value me, you take back control of your life. You no longer hand over your happiness to someone else's inconsistent behavior. You stop waiting for their validation to feel secure. You build your own security from within. And when that foundation is solid, no rejection, no neglect, no silence can shake it. The mind is designed to seek patterns. When you continually give without receiving, you create a pattern that reinforces the idea that your needs don't matter. But when you interrupt that pattern by stepping back, by refusing to overextend, by choosing self-respect over self-abandonment, you rewire not only how others treat you, but how you treat yourself. That interruption is powerful. It sends a new message to your heart, to your mind, and to everyone around you that you will no longer settle for less than you deserve. Imagine living from that place. Imagine waking up with peace instead of anxiety, knowing you don't need to chase someone's attention to feel complete. Imagine carrying yourself with such certainty that whether someone loves you or leaves you, your worth remains untouched. That vision is not a fantasy. It is a reality waiting for you the moment you decide to stop betraying yourself for temporary comfort. And here is the truth that changes everything. People respect what respects itself. When you choose yourself unapologetically, when you embody your standards without compromise, you create a powerful contrast. You highlight the difference between real love and shallow affection, between respect and neglect, between presence and absence. That contrast forces people to confront their own behavior. Some will rise to meet the standard, others will fall away, but either way you stand taller, stronger, freer, Do not underestimate the ripple effect of this choice. When you decide to honor your worth, you don't just change one relationship, you change the trajectory of your life. You attract opportunities, friendships, and love that align with your truth. You build an environment where you thrive instead of shrink. You create a life where your soul is nourished, not starved. And that life begins with one powerful decision to stop waiting for someone else to change and to start embodying the change yourself. Your worth is not a question, it is the answer. And the more you embrace it, the less space there is for anything or anyone that refuses to see it. That is how you transform pain into power, fear into freedom, and longing into love that is real, steady, and true. The moment you decide to stand firm in your worth, you break free from the invisible chains that once kept you tied to inconsistency and disappointment. You stop shrinking to fit into spaces that were never built to hold your greatness. You stop silencing your needs just to maintain a fragile peace. And instead, you rise into the fullness of who you are, a person who refuses to be treated as less than extraordinary. That decision alone is revolutionary because it takes you out of the role of waiting and places you firmly in the role of creating. When you create from self-worth, you no longer operate from fear. Fear says, if I set a boundary, I'll lose him. Fear whispers, if I speak up, I'll push him away. But love, rooted in self-worth, says, if he leaves because I stood in my truth, he was never meant to stay. That truth is liberating. It removes the illusion that you must sacrifice yourself to be loved, and it replaces it with the reality that only those who can honor your truth are worthy of walking beside you. This is where real attraction begins. Not attraction built on games, not attraction fueled by manipulation, but attraction born from authenticity. People are drawn to those who radiate certainty, who do not waver in their value, who move with clarity and purpose. Psychology calls this emotional congruence. When your words, your actions, and your energy align, that alignment is powerful. It sends a clear message that you are no longer at the mercy of someone else's indecision, but firmly rooted in your own. And here's the paradox that changes everything. When you stop chasing love, love starts chasing you. When you stop begging to be valued, people start valuing you because energy is contagious. When you carry yourself as whole, others cannot help but see you that way. When you treat yourself as irreplaceable, they begin to recognize what they once overlooked. And whether they rise to meet that realization or not, you are already free. Freedom is the highest form of love you can give yourself. Freedom to walk away when something no longer serves your soul. Freedom to stand tall even when others try to minimize you. Freedom to love without losing yourself in the process. That freedom does not come from them. It comes from you. And once you claim it, you will never again tolerate the chains of undervaluation. Think of the life that unfolds when you live in this freedom. You attract relationships where respect is natural, not negotiated. You build connections where consistency is the norm, not the exception. You surround yourself with people who don't just say they value you, but show it in every action, every choice, every word. That is the environment you deserve, and it begins the instant you stop settling for less. So never confuse silence for weakness or distance for indifference. Sometimes silence is the loudest declaration of self-worth, and sometimes distance is the clearest boundary of all. Both remind the world and yourself that you will no longer be undervalued. Both prove that your love is not desperate, but deliberate. Both declare that you are ready for the kind of respect and devotion that matches the greatness already inside you. The respect you demand from others is first taught by the respect you give yourself. If you keep lowering your standards, you silently tell the world that you are willing to accept scraps when you deserve the feast. But when you choose to raise your expectations and stand firm in them, you teach others exactly how to love you. This is not arrogance, this is alignment. Alignment with the truth that you were created with infinite value, and anyone who fails to recognize that value is simply unqualified to hold space in your life. Too many people wait for someone else to change before they take action. They wait for apologies, for realizations, for sudden awakenings that may never come. But waiting makes you powerless. Power begins when you stop hoping for change in someone else and start becoming the change in yourself. That's when the entire dynamic shifts. Because when you shift, the relationship either rises with you or it crumbles beneath you. Either way, you win because you are no longer chained to the prison of someone else's neglect. This is where courage must step in. Courage to enforce the boundaries you once only imagined. Courage to walk away from patterns that have stolen your peace for too long. Courage to declare that your heart, your body, your soul will not be mishandled any longer. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to act in spite of it. And with each act of courage, you reclaim pieces of yourself that you once gave away for the illusion of love. Psychologists call this self-actualization, the process of becoming fully yourself, free from the distortions of others' expectations. When you step into this space, you no longer beg to be seen. You see yourself. You no longer wait to be chosen. You choose yourself. And once you make that choice, the people around you have only two options: rise to meet the new standard or fall away. Both are victories because both clear the path to the love and respect you truly deserve. Understand this: when you decide to change how you value yourself, the ripple effect is unstoppable. It touches every part of your life, your relationships, your career, your health, your dreams. Everything begins to expand because you are no longer operating from a place of scarcity. You are no longer begging for validation. You are no longer apologizing for taking up space. You are living in the fullness of who you are meant to be, and that energy is magnetic. People may resist it at first. They may test the boundaries you set. They may question your strength, hoping you'll fold back into the old version of yourself. But if you hold steady, if you remain consistent, they will realize that the game has changed forever. And in that moment, they will either step into the role of honoring your worth, or they will disqualify themselves from your life. Both outcomes protect you. Both outcomes serve you. Both outcomes are proof that you no longer compromise your value for temporary comfort. This is how transformation happens. Not in the desperate chase for someone else to see your light, but in the unwavering decision to keep shining whether they notice or not. Because the one who matters most, yourself, has already seen it. And once you recognize your light, no one can ever dim it again. The strength you seek is not found in convincing someone to love you better. The strength you seek is found in choosing yourself when they cannot. It is found in the quiet, yet unshakable decision to stop waiting for approval that may never come. It is found in the moment you realize your value does not increase or decrease based on how someone else treats you. Your value was fixed the moment you were born, and nothing can take that away. Not rejection, not neglect, not indifference. Every time you settle for less than you deserve, you send a message to yourself that your needs do not matter. And slowly, without realizing it, you begin to erode your own self-belief. That erosion is dangerous because it convinces you that silence is easier than truth, that tolerance is safer than change, and that staying small is better than risking loss. But those lies keep you trapped in cycles that drain your energy and suffocate your spirit. The moment you reject those lies, the moment you stand and declare that your worth is not negotiable, you begin the process of healing. Healing is not always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it is the steady rebuilding of confidence, one decision at a time. Sometimes it is saying no when you used to say yes out of fear. Sometimes it is walking away when you once begged to stay. Each act of courage restores the parts of yourself that you had buried. And with every act, you grow stronger, more radiant, and more untouchable to those who would try to diminish you. This is not about punishment. This is not about revenge. This is about reclaiming the dignity that should have never been questioned. When you carry yourself with dignity, you command respect without having to demand it. You no longer argue for your value, you embody it. And that embodiment is what forces people to decide whether they can rise to meet your new standard or lose access to your presence altogether. Do not underestimate the power of your absence. Sometimes the most powerful move you can make is to step back, to withhold your energy, to stop pouring into someone who refuses to pour into you. Absence creates clarity. It reveals what your presence was worth all along. It forces reflection. And more often than not, it awakens the recognition that you should have never had to fight for in the first place. But even if their recognition never comes, even if they never change, the victory is already yours because you did not wait for their transformation to begin your own. You chose to evolve regardless. You chose to rise regardless. You chose to honor yourself regardless. That choice is what separates those who remain stuck in patterns of neglect from those who create lives filled with love, respect, and abundance. Your journey is not about proving your worth to another person. Your journey is about proving to yourself that you are strong enough to let go of what no longer honors you. That proof builds unshakable confidence. And with that confidence, you will never again confuse being tolerated with being treasured. You will never again confuse attention with devotion. You will never again confuse comfort with love. Because once you've tasted your true worth, nothing less will ever satisfy you. When you finally choose to honor your worth, you send a shockwave through every area of your life. You begin to see that the way one person treats you is not the measure of your value, but a mirror of what you have allowed. And the moment you change what you allow, the reflection changes too. Suddenly, the words that once hurt you lose their power. The actions that once broke you no longer define you, because you have chosen to write a different story, one where you are no longer a background character in someone else's narrative, but the author of your own. Every relationship you hold is shaped by the standards you set. If those standards are low, people will give you the bare minimum because they know they can. If those standards are high, people either rise to meet them or fall away. That is not cruelty. That is clarity. Clarity is the key that unlocks freedom. It removes confusion, it strips away excuses, and it reveals who truly belongs in your life. And once you have clarity, you no longer waste energy trying to convince someone to see your worth. They either see it or they don't. This clarity is born from one simple truth. You are the gatekeeper of your own life. You decide who gets access. You decide who stays and who goes. You decide how much of yourself to give and under what conditions. And when you understand that, you stop handing out keys to those who do not deserve to enter. You stop allowing people to treat you as an option while you treat them as a priority. You stop sacrificing your peace just to maintain connections that were never worthy of you in the first place. Psychology tells us that people treat you according to the behavior you reward. If you reward neglect with forgiveness, it will continue. If you reward disrespect with tolerance, it will repeat. But if you reward yourself with the courage to walk away, the pattern is broken forever. That is how cycles end. Not when they suddenly wake up and realize your worth, but when you refuse to play the same role in the cycle ever again. And here is the empowering truth. You do not have to wait for anyone else to change before you begin to live differently. You can choose today to rewrite the rules of your life. You can choose today to step out of old patterns and into new standards. You can choose today to declare that you are no longer willing to compromise your dignity for the illusion of love. That choice is available in every moment, and the more often you make it, the stronger you become. Strength grows in silence and resilience in the quiet but consistent decision to put yourself first. And as that strength grows, people notice. They see the glow of someone who knows their worth, and it forces them to reevaluate how they've treated you. Some will change because they realize what they stand to lose. Others will fade because they cannot meet the level of respect you now require. Either way, you rise. Either way, you win. Because either way, you are no longer living small. You are living in the full power of your worth.